Hello everybody, it's now 2 p.m. Berlin time and we would like to welcome you to today's NAMA Facility webinar. My name is Sören David and I'm the head of the Technical Support Unit. I will be leading you through today's webinar. Today it's our pleasure to highlight some of the features of the current NAMA Facility call, the Ambition Initiative call. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and uploaded to the NAMA Facility website. Your image or your voice will not appear on the recording since these functions have been disabled for the entire duration of this session. Nevertheless, if you do not consent to the recording, you will not be able to participate in this webinar. Let's move on to the goals for today's session. They are actually threefold. We want to start with a short introduction of the NAMA Facility and basically remind you of the existing selection process, highlighting essential news, new aspects which are due, of course, to the extraordinary nature of this current Ambition Initiative call. The good news is that the structure and the main features of the selection process, as some of you might know them from previous 7 calls, still apply. Secondly, we would like to present in some more detail the additional features and requirements introduced with this Ambition Initiative call. And third and lastly, as has been good practice in all our previous webinars, we would also like to offer a session on questions and answers at the end of the webinar. As time will be limited, we will respond partly today to those questions, but again separately respond to those questions and also include them where suitable in our upcoming clarification notes. Now, before we dive into that second part on the introduction of the AE call, I think we would first like to take a look at the overall structure of the webinar. So today we have foreseen 4 parts and it will be covered by different colleagues. I will be leading through the second part. Radina will be so kind to offer the first part on the technical overview and also respond to upcoming questions, while Nina will be in charge for the third part. So before we go into the content of this webinar, I'd like to hand over to Radina for some technical clarifications. Radina, please.
Thank you, Sören, and hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Just quick remark from my side on some of the technical aspects of the webinar. As Sören already mentioned, you are all muted automatically, and you will not be able to tune in to our webinar, but you may submit your questions, and I, as the moderator of the questions, will see them and will gather them throughout the webinar and try to cover some in our Q&A session. Please note that all questions that will be submitted today, as well as covered today, will be also taken up in our clarification notes, which will be published on February 10th. So yeah, on the screen you can see the tab and how it should look on your site. So as we move along, please submit your questions and we'll pick them up. Back to you, Sören. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Radina. And let's move on to the next part, to a quick introduction to the NAMA Facility and the Ambition Initiative call. So on this slide, you can see some facts of the NAMA Facility. Founded in 2013, the NAMA Facility is a multi-donor fund that has by now availed more than 660 million euros of funding for mitigation projects that we call NSPs. With this current Ambition Initiative call, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation is joining Germany, the UK, Denmark, and the EU as our 5th donor. In the course of the previous reoccurring and typically annual 7 calls, the NAMA Facility has selected 28 NSPs for support that are now in various stages of preparation and implementation. NSPs are selected from all sectors relevant for mitigation. On the map we are displaying on this slide, you can see the regional distribution of NSPs in partner countries. Please note that all our calls and the Ambition initiative is no exception to that, are open for all relevant sectors for mitigation, and there's no regional focus. Let's take a look at some of the key aspects of the Ambition initiative call. The Ambition initiative call was launched back in December and actually announced already in July, and it is tailor-made to support partner countries in implementing enhanced ambitious NDCs, in aligning these efforts with the national green recovery agendas, and in aligning these efforts with NDC partnership plans. 174 million euros have been committed to support this climate action, and that is the biggest funding we've ever seen in any of our calls. The Ambition initiative call comes together with certain features, conditions, but also new modalities that we would like to present to you in more detail today. We are confident that these new opportunities arising will result in a wide range of impactful projects. Let's move on to some essential details of new opportunities and conditions related to the Ambition initiative call. So on this slide, we'd like to highlight some of the new opportunities. And there's 4 characteristics that we would like to highlight. Firstly, on the funding volume of NSPs. While we have previously seen an upper limit of 20 million euros per project, that has been increased to 25 million per NSP. Please note that just as in previous years, you could even go beyond this threshold if you would come up with a good argumentation. Secondly, on additional funding to be availed for successful NSPs. Those NSPs that will prove to be very successful in implementation might become eligible to additional funding made available at a later stage. Thirdly, concerning the circle of eligible recipients of NAMA facility funding, there is now an increased possibility for commercial entities to act as recipients of NAMA facility funding, and we'll get back to that particular aspect in the course of today's webinar. And lastly, a new mode of delivery has been added with the opportunity to have small-sized projects for novel technologies tapping into NAMA facility funding. Also on this aspect, there's more information available, and we will get back to the resources where you can get more clarity on all those aspects aside of this webinar. Let's move on to some of the additional conditions that are specific to the Ambition initiative call. Firstly, only NSPs intervening in countries that have presented enhanced NDCs are eligible under the Ambition initiative call. Secondly, these NSPs will then be required to intervene in the sectors that have explicitly been mentioned in these enhanced NDCs. So the NSP needs to connect to these specific sectors. Thirdly, where partner countries have introduced measures to foster green recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, we expect NSPs to be well embedded and aligned with such measures. And lastly, to further strengthen the alignment of the NAMA facility with the endeavors of the NDC partnership, we expect that NSPs are well aligned with the NDCP's partnership plans in countries where they exist. Now, while this might look like a lot of new aspects and conditions, don't feel discouraged. If you go to the application documents, particularly the NSP outline template, you will see a lot of guidance and key questions that will guide you in filling in the required information. On the final slide of this part of the webinar, we would like now to share with you some insights on the enlarged circle of applicants eligible to tap into NAMA facility funding. As you can see in the top 2 dark blue boxes, just as in all previous NAMA facility calls, we have a 2-stage selection process. While at the outset, applicants are required to present an NSP outline. Those projects selected for the detailed preparation phase are requested to present their NSP proposals. Here, the key news is that at both stages, besides national ministries and other entities eligible to present those documents and become eligible to fund, to receive NAMA facility funding, also commercial entities can participate as applicants, applicant support partners, and NSOs. We think this is great news and hope to engage with more commercial entities in this particular call than ever before. For further details, once again, please consult the GID, and we will also get back to this particular aspect later on in the webinar. And with that, I would like to close the second part of the webinar and head over to Nina for the third part. Please, Nina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zoran. So this was a very nice overview of the NAMA facility and of the Ambition initiative. And let us now dive even deeper into the specific characteristics of the Ambition initiative call. And first of all, process and timeline. It was mentioned already that the funding decision was announced in July and September 2020, and the call was launched on the 12th of December 2020. And it will last until the 31st of May 2021. So now we're in the period when call is open. The outlines have to be submitted until the 31st of May 2021, 3 p.m. Central European summertime. This is a very important date and time, so please keep that in mind. And probably it is the most important, one of the most important takeaways from this webinar. When outlines are submitted, they will be assessed. You see that this box is in orange color, which means that the assessment will be done by the TSU and external evaluators. Assessment is split into two phases, a desktop assessment and an in-depth assessment, and will take in total a few months between June and October. When the outlines are assessed, the board will make a decision on the NSPs that will go into the detailed preparation phase. And this decision will be announced either prior to or at COP26 in Glasgow. When this decision is made, then the selected outlines will go into the detailed preparation phase. And another important information or another important numbers is that you need to keep in mind that in the Ambition initiative call, the DPP should either take 10 or 15 months. So it cannot be shorter, it cannot be longer, it cannot be 11 months, it cannot be 18 months, it should be either 10 or 15. And after those 10 or 15 months, TSU expects proposals of the NAMA support projects to be submitted by NAMA support organizations. So the organizations that will afterwards take care of the project implementation. Assessment of proposal usually takes around 4 months, and after that, the board will make a decision on which NAMA support projects or NSPs will go into the implementation. And then basically the implementation starts, and implementation lasts usually 3 or 5, maximum 5.5 years. We understand that the process is quite complicated, and in total it takes around 7 years, the whole cycle. So the TSU is always there and for you to support you during all the phases of the outline selection and DPP and of course implementation. What is the most important now is to remember when the submission deadline for the NSP outlines, and again it is 31st of May 2021, 3 p.m. Central European summertime. If you will need of course time to confront yourself with this chart and with those stages of the NSP selection in more detail, and you can always refer to the general information document, section 4.1, in order to receive more information and receive more details on the process. And we can move forward to the characteristics of NSPs. On this slide, you see characteristics of NAMA support projects that are constant and usual for all calls of the NAMA facility, and of course, Ambition Initiative call is not an exception. So we still expect that those characteristics will be fulfilled. First of all, NSPs have to trigger transformational change. They need to be implementation ready. They have to combine technical component and financial component. So they need to work on capacity building for national stakeholders, but they also need to include components that will allow to improve framework conditions. So they need to work with policies and regulations, but they also need to include financial mechanism to overcome financial barriers, investment barriers, to ensure that afterwards, when NSP is over, activities and the transformations that was triggered can be self-sustaining and irreversible. And here we come to the final box, which is have a phase-out strategy to ensure long-term sustainability. But Ambition Initiative has a few specific additional characteristics that reflect a very specific character of this call. So, of course, NAMA support projects need to be always well embedded into the NDCs and climate policies. But in the Ambition Initiative, even more emphasis is given to this specific aspect. As it was mentioned, enhanced NDCs is one of the eligibility criteria. So what is awaited from NSPs is that they contribute and support enhanced and ambitious NDCs. The NSPs need to engage in the sectors that are explicitly included in the NDCs, and if NDCP partnership plans exist, NSPs should consider those and should also contribute to the partnership plans. And last but not least, contribution to the national COVID-19 recovery strategies is another essential characteristics of the NSPs. On another note, we are often asked whether NAMAs are needed or mandatory for having the NSP submitted. The answer is no. NAMA or nationally appropriate mitigation actions are not necessary. What is important for us is that NSPs contribute to enhanced NDCs and that they refer explicitly to the sectoral strategies and climate policies and again, sectoral strategies for climate change mitigation. More details on the specific characteristics of NSPs, as already was said, you can find in GID section 4.1. And we move forward to the application documents. Application documents can be split into two broad categories. First of all, it's NSP outline template, and secondly, it's also mandatory annexes. NSP outline template didn't undergo a lot of changes in comparison to the 7th call. So applicants that have applied for the 7th call or have been following NAMA facility for some time will not find a lot of changes in the NSP outline template. It is still roughly 20 pages. It is still has a lot of guidance and guiding questions that will help you to fill in the outline template properly. But to highlight or to emphasize those specific characteristics of NSPs that were mentioned on the previous slide, NSP outline template includes some additional sections or guiding questions. So first of all, there is an addition on data on submission of enhanced NDCs. We need a date when those NDCs were submitted to the UNFCCC. There is an increased or strengthened emphasis on embeddedness in NDCs and climate policies and NDCP partnership plans. And in addition, there is a separate section on a national COVID-19 pandemic context and green recovery strategies. Again, those additions are made not to make your life more complicated, but just to give you an opportunity to provide full information about your NSP and to prove that your NSP fits well into the specifics of the Ambition Initiative call. Another part of your application documents are mandatory annexes. Again, those applicants that have been following the NAMA facility for a long time or specifically paid attention to the 7th call may know that Annex 6 on greenhouse gas mitigation potential underwent significant changes last year. There is a podcast on the NAMA facility website regarding the Annex 6 which describes how to fill this annex, how to work with it, what is the essential information that you need to provide. So please, we highly encourage you to listen to the podcast, because it will really help you to fill in Annex 6, which in this case, it hasn't been changed since the 7th call. Other annexes is endorsement letters, log frame, information on applicant or applicant support partner, DPP concept, and budget. And now you may be wondering why financial mechanism and business model Annex 5 is in green. This is because this year Annex on financial mechanism and business model underwent quite some changes. And on the next slide, I will explain in a bit more detail what has happened to this annex. So what we now require or await in terms of the financial mechanism, in terms of the information financial mechanism. First of all, Annex 5 is now has two mandatory parts. Annex 5A for the financial mechanism and Annex 5B for the underlying business model. For Annex 5A, it is mandatory to use the NAMA facility template. Now it is in MS Word document, and NAMA facility or TSU will publish a podcast on Annex 5A, similarly to the Annex 5.6, that will explain how to fill in this document, what information is needed, and what is the best way to provide all the data that is required. Annex 5B, in the contrary, is to supplement Annex 5A and basically to provide calculations behind the financial mechanism. So Annex 5B is a reflection of your business model and can provide us with analysis of different business cases or business scenarios. For Annex 5B, it is possible to use an Excel template provided by the NAMA facility. This is the same Excel document that has been previously used in the 7th call as simply Annex 5. Or if you don't want to use this Excel template or consider it to be inappropriate to really reflect specifics of your business model or business cases, in this case, you as an applicant or applicant support partner can use an own soft-coded document featuring business model in an Excel or a similar format. What is the most important for us is that the document is soft-coded. So we want to see calculations behind the business models, behind the financial mechanisms. We want to understand your way of thinking, and we want to be able to verify how feasible your business model and financial mechanisms are. So it is really important to pay attention and not provide hard figures in your Annex 5B. This is a mandatory requirement, so to say. And we can move on to the next slide. Yes, when all the application documents are filled in, then it comes for TSU to assess the eligibility of NSPs. Here are a few new eligibility criteria, but the list is not exhaustive. So please go to GID, consult section 513 for the full list of eligibility criteria. Here is only a few new ones. So the first of all, of course, is a deadline, 31st of May 2021, 3 p.m. Central European Summer Time. I said many times, please keep that date in mind. Secondly, Søren has already mentioned that enhanced NDCs is an eligibility criteria. So the country in which the NSP intends to intervene should have its NDCs presented to UNFCCC until 31st of May 2021, and those NDCs need to be enhanced and need to meet the definition of ambitious NDCs as specified in the general information document. DPP, I already mentioned that. Now it has a duration of either 10 or 15 months. This is again an eligibility criteria. So if you submit an outline proposing DPP of 11 months, it won't be eligible under the Ambition Initiative call. And funding volume, again, Søren also mentioned it already, was increased to maximum 25 million euro, excluding DPP funding. So another important eligibility criteria. Again, for the full list, please consult GID section 513. And we move on. After your NSP outline was checked whether it is eligible or not, then the next part is an outline assessment. Outline assessment basically is based on two criteria, which is ambition and feasibility, and both add 25 points to the overall NSP score. Ambition is split into 3 sub-criteria. One is potential for transformational change. The next one is financial ambition and mitigation potential. You can see from the way the scores split that the potential for transformational change is essential. What we mean under that is, first of all, the ability of the NSP to initiate a paradigm shift. And secondly, it is ability of the NSP to trigger or to redirect private and public funds towards greenhouse gas emission reduction. When it comes to feasibility, this criteria also has 3 sub-criteria, which is project rationale, project design, and DPP concept. When we are speaking about project rationale, it is basically a very comprehensive barrier analysis. You need to showcase that you understand very well what are the main barriers that hinder transformation in the sectors that you have chosen. In the project design, we want you to show how you plan to address those barriers, what activities you plan to implement, and why these activities will be the most suitable in order to tackle the barriers that you identified. More details are provided in GID section 5.3. So again, please read GID and consult this section in order to understand better the details of the assessment criteria. General information document. It was mentioned already a lot of times during this webinar. It is available on the NAMA facility website. You can download it. It is available in English, and we highly encourage you to read the document carefully. It for sure contains answers to a lot of your questions, and it provides an information that will help you to fill in NSP outline template and fill in your annexes in an appropriate way, and to increase the chances that your NSP outline will be successful. So please, again, read general information document carefully and use it in order to develop and design your NSP. And we move forward. Apart from GID, there are also a wealth of materials that NAMA facility and TSU provide in order to facilitate development of NSP outlines. First of all, we collect written questions and we publish clarification notes every month until the closure of the call. And it will be done on the NAMA facility website that you can see on your screen. You can submit your questions to the contact@namafacility.org, and again, they will be taken on and will be part of the clarification notes. Clarification notes will be published on the 10th of February, upcoming clarification notes, 10th of February, 10th of March, 7th of April, 28th of April, and 19th of May 2021. And besides it, you already can consult clarification notes that were published on the 14th of January. And last but not least, we have webinars. In those webinars, we explain you, as today, specific of the call, we explain you how to better, how to develop your outline, and we also provide you with an exhaustive clarifications. So next webinars, the second webinar is planned for the 24th of March 2021, and the topic will be NSP outline development, case studies and examples. And webinar 3, clarifications and FAQs, is planned for the 21st of April 2021. So please keep in mind those days and probably already set a reminder that there is a webinars from the NAMA facility. Another part on useful resources. As I said already, a NAMA facility website contains a lot of information that will help you develop your outlines. First of all, central documents that you need to consult and that you need to use are application documents and ambition initiative call general information document. This is basically the Bible of the ambition initiative call. M&E framework, monitoring and evaluation framework of the NAMA facility. Please consult the document because you need it in order to understand the monitoring requirements of the NAMA facility. Webinars, there are much more on the website. Here is just a few selected webinars that we would highly recommend. It is NSP outline development from the 7th call. If you don't want to wait until the 24th of March to participate in the second webinar, that will provide you with some recommendations on NSP outline development under the Ambition Initiative call, please go and check the webinar on the 7th call. As I said, many annexes remain the same. NSP outline template didn't undergo a lot of changes, so the webinar still will be extremely useful. Another useful resource which will be very helpful for you to fill in Annex 6 is an AMO Facility podcast on greenhouse gas mitigation potential. Please listen to it. We know from the applicants that it is an extremely useful and helpful source that will indeed facilitate elaboration of Annex 6. And if you want to understand better what financial mechanisms are and why they are so important for the NAMO support projects, please consult a webinar on the financial mechanisms and the NAMO support project. Some further information, as was mentioned already, Ambition Initiative call, clarifications and FAQ. Please stay tuned because they will be published on a monthly basis on the NAMO Facility website. Transformational change, ability of NSPs to trigger transformation is one of the essential characteristics of NSP. So probably it is useful or it is helpful to understand what transformational change is. So please go and check on the NAMO Facility website the working definition of the transformational change. Sustainable development co-benefits is one of the questions in the NSP outline template. So again, please go to the website and check what are the sustainable development co-benefits in the NAMO Facility. And probably if there are still questions on the NAMO Facility and you never dared to ask them, please check the document that provides you with the 10 things about the NAMO Facility that you always wanted to know. And with that, we are moving to the fourth part of our webinar, which is Q&A session, and I'm happy to give the floor to Radina and Søren.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Nina. I think that was a lot of information, and our webinars, I believe, tend to be very dense. The essential thing is really that it's worth listening in, and we try to portray new and additional highlights of individual calls as good as we can. But the most important message is really to take a lot of time and read through all the documents and webinars and podcasts we have available on our website. So please do take this seriously and invest that time. Nonetheless, as in all webinars, we wanted to have a final look into some essential questions that arose. And I mean, this Ambition Initiative call, of course, is very special in many ways. And it's also reflected in the way we would like to deal with the Q&A session. So while in previous calls we've used those webinars to answer to questions on the spot, so we would collect them in the webinar and respond to them directly. This year around, we thought that there are some apparent questions that are so sensitive that we preferred actually to portray them to you in a written format and also provide the answers straight away in a written format to prevent any confusion. And we picked three quite central questions that we will address now in a bit. But just before we do that, I'd like to highlight again that all the questions we collected as part of this webinar, and if I counted correctly, there must be around 10 so far from more than 140 participants we've been seeing in the webinar. All those questions will be addressed individually, so you will receive individual responses from ourselves to those questions, and where suitable, we will also publish the questions and the answers in our upcoming clarification notes. And with that, we would like to move to the first questions we have pre-selected. As I mentioned, we will read them out. I will read them out, and Radina will be so kind to respond on our behalf. So here comes question number one. How are NSP outlines treated that refer to national contexts in which enhanced NDCs are not presented to UNFCCC up until the closure of the Ambition Initiative call on 31st of May 2021? Radina, please.
Thank you, Zoran. So the NAMO facility expects that by the closure of the Ambition Initiative call in May, a significant number of enhanced NDCs will have been presented to the UNFCCC. As stated in the General Information Document, the GID, outlines of NSPs that plan to intervene in a country with an enhanced NDC submitted to the UNFCCC until the closure of the initiative call on May 31st will be eligible to participate in the call. But also please note that further NSP outlines of countries whose NDC updates have been delayed due to the COVID pandemic may be eligible under future calls of the Ambition Initiative if such rounds will be launched. All related information will be published on the NAMO facility website in due course. Back to you, Zoran.
Am I live now? I don't see the red box around me. Can you? I'm a part of the. Oh, I'm not. Thanks, Radina. And here comes question number 2. How will applicants know if the NDCs of countries for which they are developing NSP outlines are considered enhanced and ambitious according to the definition as used for the purposes of the Ambition Initiative call? Radina, please, with your answer.
According to the definition as used for the purposes of the Ambition Initiative call, enhanced NDCs are characterized by strengthening mitigation targets and actions over time, strengthening emissions reduction goals, including the addition of sector-specific goals and targets, or by broadening the scope to include a wider coverage of sectors or gases. Countries may additionally enhance NDCs by moving from conditional to unconditional targets, shortening timelines, and/or adding policies and measures, as described also in our GID section 4.1. For an NDC to be considered as ambitious, according to the NAMO facility's definition, the NDC should meet several or all of the criteria. First, compatibility with the globally agreed temperature limit under the Paris Agreement, mitigation target that implies a significant reduction of economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions below business as usual emissions trajectories, and/or includes a rapid reduction of greenhouse gas in key emitting sectors with a view to achieving decarbonization, and/or implies an early peaking of greenhouse gas emissions and rapid decarbonization thereafter, and/or is aligned with an existing net zero target, as also described in section 4.1 of our GID. In their NSP outlines, applicants should indicate how the intervention proposed under the NSP should be embedded into the respective ambitious NDCs, and therefore why the NSP would meet the targets of the Ambition Initiative goal, as also outlined in section 2.4 embedding of our GID. Oh, in the outline, not the GID, in the outline. It is noteworthy that in the course of the Ambition Initiative call, the NAMO facility will not express its views on the level of ambition of individual enhanced NDCs. Please note that in our next webinar on March 24th, the TSU will present more tangible examples of what enhanced and ambitious NDCs could be in a fictional example. Back to you, Zoran.
Thanks very much for that, Radina. I think that is quite something to chew on. I mean, there was a question on one slide, and then we took actually 3 slides to respond to it. So I would advise everybody to carefully look into these three slides. Okay, let's move on with the third and potentially last question. Given that the NAMA facility funds are considered as ODA funds, does the NAMA facility assess only the ambition of a country's conditional NDC, or are the contributions in their totality assessed, both conditional and unconditional contributions?
Also another good question. The NAMA facility will take into consideration the totality of a country's NDC, i.e. the unconditional and conditional contribution, in order to assess whether the definition of ambitious NDCs as specified in section 4.1 of the General Information Document has been met. And with that, those are the prepared questions that we have. Zoran?
I think, as I mentioned before, we will take the additional questions we received today separately and engage with the persons who post them individually, and also consider responses for our clarification notes. Thank you.
Okay, and back to you, Nina, then.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you, Radina and Zoran, for this comprehensive Q&A session. It is indeed a lot to be digested for the potential applicants. So we again encourage you to consult all the available materials, including the General Information Document, that you will find many of the necessary answers there. What is next? As announced already, there are 2 upcoming webinars, one on the 24th of March, which will provide you with a bit more tangible material in terms of the NSP outline development. It will be case studies and examples. We will shed light on the possible interpretation of enhanced and ambitious NDCs and some fictional examples. So please make sure that you attend this webinar. On the 21st of April, there will be a clarification and FAQs. So we will gather all the questions received throughout the application process or application period, and we'll try to again shed light on the most important questions that were raised quite often. Upcoming clarification rounds during the next 4 months, we will publish clarifications. So in February, in March, 2 times in April, and then in May, before the closure of the Ambition Initiative call. So again, stay tuned and check the NAMA facility website. There is also a dedicated page for the Ambition Initiative call. You can find their timeline, GID, application documents. Please make sure to visit it. And if in case of questions, please contact the technical support unit at contact@namafacility.org. As said already, a lot to digest during this webinar, a lot of new information, but what you need to keep in mind, probably the most important thing, is the deadline, 31st of May, 2021, 3 p.m. Please make sure that if you want to apply, that you will have your outline prepared, that you will have all the annexes filled in and finished, and that you will be able to submit the NSP outlines to the TSU until the 31st of May in order to be considered under the Ambition Initiative call. With that, I guess we are quite at the end of the webinar. So thank you for your participation.